webinar. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you so much for joining and, like I said, for taking the time out. My name is Devina Nigam. I am a consultant at Atma. Little bit about us. Atma is an organization. It's an accelerator for education. We're an organization that supports education NGOs to become bigger, better, stronger by building capacity and creating systems and processes to solve common organizational development matters that they face. We started our journey in 2007 and since have supported more than 85 organizations in their journey of excellence. At Atma, like I think most of you, we understand and acknowledge the fact and the importance of shared knowledge and the fact that in a sector like ours, resources are just so limited. Therefore, the webinar series. So this webinar series really started as a space to share our perspectives, learnings, ideas, get experts from across the sector together to talk about issues that NGOs face on a daily basis. Atma Webinar is a curated platform where speakers share practical experiences. They share their journeys that other organizations could benefit from. The topics for these webinars really range from human resource management to talking about program management, finance policies, fundraising, essentially any pressing topic that affects the sector as a whole. Our today's topic is about its fundraising strategies by an early stage organization. Today, we will talk about a lot of things. Some of the things that we're hoping to touch upon and we're hoping that you can take away as learnings is about talking about unrestricted funding, where to leverage this sort of funding, importance of documentation and compliance, which is required for fundraising. We'll talk a little bit about communications. We'll talk about different channels that can be used for fundraising. We'll also talk a little bit about what does this kind of support the team or a board can really provide in raising funds. As speaker today, as all of you know, is Devanshu. I do want to talk a little bit about him before I hand it over to him. Devanshu is the co-founder and chief executive officer at Involve. He's a serial entrepreneur focused on solving complex social problems through the first principle thinking. So do ask him about that if any of you have any questions. He co-founded Involve, an education nonprofit, during his sophomore years at IIT Madras while pursuing his mechanical engineering. Involve so far has worked with over 10,000 students in the last 4 years and aims to reach 1 million students in the next 5 years. With a passion for education, Devanshu has given a lot of talks. He's been covered widely by really respected outlets like Forbes, LinkedIn, Your Story, India Today, The Hindu, and a lot of the other media houses, with a special feature in CNBC Young Turks. This is something that I learned about him while we were talking about the webinar, which is that he has a special distinction of being featured in a popular Tamil language picture motion called Hero for his work on septic tank robots. Unfortunately, I don't follow Tamil cinema, but I am going to, I think I am going to look for this particular movie. So thank you so much, Devanshu. We're so excited. Really looking forward to learn about fundraising, especially given that we're going to be talking about early stage organizations. So over to you.
Hi, thanks, Ravina. Thanks a lot for the wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I think this topic is quite very important for all of us who have started organizations or who are looking forward to starting organizations. My journey started, like Ravina mentioned, back in early years of my college as sophomore, where I was working with various organizations and realized that education was something that I was really, really passionate about. And we work on a model called peer learning that I will talk about a bit in detail over the next 10 minutes. But before that, I just wanted to give a bit of a context about how the whole conversation is going to be so that we can plan for the same. The first 10 minutes, I'll talk about our organization, the work that we have been doing since the past 3-4 years, and how we are looking to make a difference. What is the theory of change? How is the team like? What we have done so far? So a bit of that. And then I will talk about our fundraising journey primarily, how it has gotten influenced over the last 4 years, what has changed, what has remained the same. And then I talk a bit about the strategies, some key learnings that I've had. These learnings are by no means very absolute. So take it with a pinch of salt and apply it in your own context. But what I've seen is generally there are certain trends that get followed in fundraising that I would want to share. And then I'll share about our future plans. That should take about like 30-35 minutes or 40 minutes for us. And then the floor will be open to questions. I'd want to keep it as much interactive as possible because it will be important because the session is for you. So it should be important that you get a lot from the session rather than me just speaking about it, right? So with that, we would start with the first aspect of the session, which is I want to just get a poll started to understand what is the sort of demography of the audience, what is like typically people who have started organizations for how much they have raised so far, so that I can contextualize my talk towards that. So Devina, if you can do that.
I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Let me know if you're able to see this.
Yes.
Yeah, great. I'm gonna keep it on for another 10 seconds.
Are people able to respond?
Yeah, yes. Okay. All right, I'm just gonna end this.
Okay. Oh, now I'm able to see the polls. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, are you able to see this?
Yeah. Oh, wow, okay. So we have a lot of primarily organizations who are above 5 years. Okay. Annual budget for about 30% is above 1 crore. Okay. 5. Okay. And majority of the people spend about 25% of their time raising funds. All right, good. So the thing that I understand from here is about half of the people are above 5 years, which is like sort of the age of the organization that I belong to, and have 30% of them have funds above 1 crore, which again is a good sort of state of the organization to be in, which essentially means that I would keep primarily of my sort of thought process aligned towards how we can raise funds after a couple of years of starting our organization, because 0 to 1 is fairly new. I'll also talk about a bit on that, but I primarily keep focusing on the latter end of the spectrum. Okay, great. Thanks, Devina. Thanks a lot for responding to the poll, everyone. Just sharing a brief about the organization. So what we realized was we talk about the gap in education that has been there for a while, and we talk about academic gap. We talk about students not being ready for the future, not having the skill sets that they need. And during the pandemic, there was a lot of conversation around also on how students do not have the capability completely to overcome adversity that comes their way. And one of the things that we realized was key was that students today do not have the agency to make decisions on their own. They're completely dependent on the teachers or parents to decide for themselves, and they do not have, and we have never sort of developed them to get empowered in that direction. We generally expect ourselves to take decisions for them, and that we think needs to change should we want to improve academic or non-academic outcomes for them. And that's why we as an organization completely focus on developing that lack of agency in students, where we can empower them to make their own choices, understand the importance of learning, and then set out to do things. So in that context, we have a solution which is developed on peer-based learning, where the idea is that whatever we design, whatever intervention, be it an academic teaching intervention or a skill development intervention, it should be co-designed with students. It should be led by students in some manner, and the participation of the students should be actively, voluntarily, rather than us forcing them to do that. Because one of the key that is important for us is that if we want the students to take charge, the first thing that should happen is that they should understand the importance of the thing that they're being participating in. So that's something that we focus on. And we have seen that through our program, we have been able to actually specifically achieve those outcomes in terms of building academic skills, building future ready skills, and building that ownership that we need in the students going forward. So that's something that we do. Talking about the specific, this is the program that we have. Okay. Yeah. So essentially the basic base program that we have is we call a peer teaching program, where we have students from 7th grade and above teaching their juniors to clear their doubts in terms of numeracy, literacy, and so on. The idea is that if we can create an ecosystem of learning from the students, by the students in the school, then one, it will reduce the dependency that they have on tuitions and external factors. And two, students will be able to figure a lot of the problems on their own, rather than going to adults or teachers for every small thing that they have. So far on this, we have worked with about 5,000 students for this specific program, and we have seen significant improvement in literacy and numeracy skills, like more than 39% improvement. And we've also seen that the senior students on whom we have a specific focus on skills, more than 80% of them have actually been able to improve on the skills like communication, problem solving, self-confidence, ownership, and so on. The other way that we have seen through these programs scaling is by actually not deciding to sort of implement these programs on our own, but looking for partner organizations who have focus on numeracy and literacy, and where they can use the pedagogy of peer-based learning to improve their learning outcomes. So for example, one of the things that we're doing in MP is we have partnered with this organization called Parivar, who already have a lot of community centers present in the villages that they go to. And we have developed this peer teaching structure, where in each community center, or the Seva Kutir as they call, we have senior students teaching their juniors. This program is something that we just kick-started after the second wave of COVID. And in just 6 months, we have seen tremendous improvement in the students because of that community participation that we are able to bring in. Similarly, post-COVID, we started working with teachers in Anekal block, where we asked them to create this model of learning within their schools, where they can find groups of students learning from each other. And we saw that students had very active participation. So earlier students were not willing to come back to school, but now that they were able to work with each other and work with their students, they were able to actively participate in the activities. So this is our team. Our core team is quite young and sharing a passion of education and change for the students. Very diverse backgrounds and quite committed towards the cause. We have all sort of excelled in the field that we have studied in and worked on, and then decided consciously to come back to education and give back. Our advisors are also quite strong in terms of having a good mix of knowledge about on-ground implementation of organizations who have scaled their programs with the state, of professionals who have done extensive work on strategy, on education, on fundraising, and also in terms of pedagogy on how we can work with the students to improve our outcomes. So that's the way that we have structured the advisory board. And there is something called anchors that I will talk about in the fundraising aspect as well, that will be useful for a lot of organizations going forward. Some of the brief achievements that we wanted to share is that sort of in terms of fundraising, we were one of the few organizations that are there that were able to onboard very sort of reputed corporates even before completing our 3 year of operations, because of the specific documentation and compliance that we had in place. And we have been fairly successful with raising funds in the crowdfunding platforms, be it Give India, Impact Guru, Milap, and so on. And in terms of impact, we have been able to see quite a number of students. Like, so if you look at the center part of the impact, which is this, we look at more than 54% of the students who have actually been a part of the program earlier have used the skills that they learned in peer teaching, not just in the year that we intervened in, but also going forward post that. So that was a huge impact parameter for us. And we were also fairly recognized nationally and internationally by various brands on our work that we're doing in peer-based learning. And that's the reason one of the things that we're looking at is also to partner with various education organizations who have these outcomes as their specific sort of theory of change, and we can leverage the pedagogy of peer-based learning to do that. So if anybody of you is interested beyond this call, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be very happy to connect with the pedagogy team as well. Now, coming back to the fundraising aspect, which is the core aspect of this talk today, we have been there for about 4 years now, and going forward the next year, which is 2023, we have a target to work with about 17,000 students, where the number of students that we would work with in this year would grow about 5x, and so the budget of the organization will also go about 2.5x in general. So some of the things that we have, like data that I have seen here, is that one, so far in our journey, we have had a healthy mix of corporates, foundation, and retail to be able to ensure that we are never solely dependent on one way of a sort of form of fundraising. The other thing that we have seen is also that our organization budget has grown about 1.75x every year. So we have been able to sort of keep ensure that the existing funders are there. We have been able to repeat those funders. At the same time, we have been also able to do some new fundraising on that. We haven't applied for FCRS so far. We have just started applying for that, and it will take us about 6 to 9 months to do that. So from next year onwards, we are looking at foreign funding. And now that we have completed about 3 years of our program, we are in talks with various funders to present them strong impact and to be able to see how we can convert their funding into a multi-year funding, so that every year we do not have to go on and raise new funds for the project that we are doing, right? So now this is a chart that I was for this webinar, I was putting down the data specifically for how we have raised funds over the years from various categories. And one of the things that you will be able to see, and this is very, very relevant for early stage organizations, is that initially the first 2 years our funding significantly came from individuals. So the blue color that you see in 2018-19, I will just, let me get this. Yeah. So this thing that you'll see and this thing that you will see has primarily come from two things. One, in terms of individual donors, it came from crowdfunding that we did, which is also called retail fundraising. That's one of the best ways for an early stage organization to actually raise funds, because one, it helps you build networks, it helps you find the early stage of supporters that you have, and at the same time, it doesn't require a lot of compliance from you that you may not have in the first year. Anybody who is running a non-profit would understand that in the first, like when you register the organization, it takes you about anywhere from 6 to 12 months to get your 12A ATG and other registrations. So in that first year, the retail fundraising is the most critical that you will have in terms of raising funds. Or if you have any individual donors, HNIs who are willing to give you a couple of lakhs, that's really the best way for us to raise funds. The other thing that really works out is where we have been applied for various incubators, foundation, and awards, which give you anywhere from 3 lakhs to 15 lakhs of funds. And that is a very good strategy for any early stage organization to raise funds from. Some of the names that I can talk about right now could be Nudge, Center for Social Incubation, Unlimited, Edumentum. These are incubation programs through which you can get funds for anywhere from like 5 lakhs to 15 lakhs. Wipro is another, Wipro Seeding Fellowship. So where it will actually help you build the early set of core team members. Because in the early years of our organization, what we are really looking forward to is building a strong team who's able to build the organization forward. And in that way, you are still sort of figuring out your program. You still do not have a very strong program design and a strong impact report to show for a specific sort of reputed foundations and corporates, and hence get raising funds from individuals or those incubator programs becomes very, very critical for us. And that's what we did. So our early sort of 2 years of funds entirely came from those two setups, where we were heavily dependent on incubator programs. So for example, we got into Nudge Center for Social Entrepreneurship, where we actually raised about 10 lakhs from there. We did 2 crowdfunding events in both the years where we were able to raise about 8 to 10 lakhs. So that was very, very helpful for us. And then if you notice this, from third year onwards, we have been able to get CSR funds. So third year, like I said, before completing the third year, we were able to raise some corporate funds. So that gave us about 20 lakhs of funds there. And going forward, what we have seen is CSR funding, tapping into CSR funding is a very strong way of ensuring sustainability of funds. Because one, if you're able to get a corporate for the first time, it is highly unlikely that they will not fund you unless we really sort of, sorry to use the word, screw up in our programs, right? So because they take up a lot of compliance check and due diligence before coming on board, they generally have higher chances of repeating the funds onward. All you need to do is have a strong engagement strategy for them to be able to believe that the work that you have promised is actually happening, right? So, and that's how we have been able, that's our strategy as well. So far we have already, for the year 22-23, we've been able to get commitment of about like soft commitment of about like 45 to 50 lakhs of funds from the corporates. And that's what we will be going to scale as well. Also, because if you compare the different sort of channels of funding that we have, CSR is the only funding source where there is a specific commitment that is there for each year that they have to spend. While for individuals or for foundations, there isn't any particular commitment that they have to invest some amount of money year on year. And in that case, once you've been able to get some corporate on board, it is very easy for you to get the funding retained. The other thing is also that for most of these mid sort of stage corporates who are there, who would have a budget of about 50 lakh, 1 crore or so, they would have a fairly simple process of how the fundraising sort of essentially happens. So they look for standard compliance documents in terms of 3 years of audited reports, CSR registration, and so on. And if you're able to fall in the category of the theme that they are providing, be it education, healthcare, or so on, it's a fairly simple process that they will ask you for a specific proposal template. You have to fill in your theory of change, impact that you're going to show, quarterly report that you provide, and then the funds will come through. So the thing that I would suggest a lot of organizations who are in this 3 to 5 years range is to look at these small and mid-scale CSRs who do not have a specific sort of CSR team in place, and the decisions are primarily driven by the chief executives who are there. So if you're able to find organizations who are getting funded by that, you can just ask them to get connected by them and then pitch to the direct sort of senior executive there itself. This particular thing has helped us a lot in the first year of the corporate funding that we raised. So for example, there was a corporate that we wanted to get on board, and we were able to get the HR head as our mentor previous year. So what happened was we were working with them quite often, and the HR had really believed in our program. So when we actually sort of expanded to that city, he himself went to the CFO and the CEO and the sort of CSR board that is there to recommend us. And believe it or not, the whole funding got confirmed within a matter of 2 weeks, which is very rare for corporate funding, because generally you have like sort of 3 to 4 months of process that generally happens in this, right? So the idea that I would sort of share is for all of us to focus on this mid-range CSR, because that's something that a lot of us don't know about. Generally, if you look at these CSR portals and the key organizations, you would look at like Wells Fargo, Capgemini, Wipro, Infosys, and so on, the big names, so-called big names that are there. But the mid-scale CSR that are there, that's something that we do not focus on a lot. And there are like sort of thousands of companies like that in each city who would have some specific budget where they would not know where exactly to sort of spend on. So that is something that I would recommend you all to do. The other thing is also that during COVID, so one of the things that I wanted to share was during the 2021 time, what happened was some of the foundations that had committed funding to us had backed out because of the commitment that they had to divert their funds to other directions. So we were sort of left stranded on what do we do next, because going with the same theory like CSR funding, new CSR funding is not going to convert immediately, because during that time, corporates are also sort of diverting their funds towards immediate needs of COVID in terms of healthcare and ration distribution that was there, right? So one of the things that we focused on in order to survive was that we had built a set of networks of HNIs who were there, whom we had not asked for funds earlier, right? And we essentially went back to them and said that there is this specific gap of money that is there for us this year, and we need to raise, let's say, 3 lakh per individual for like 5 to 6 individuals. And can you help us from your networks to get that money? And that is essentially the, if I can go back to this slide, this is essentially the anchors that I was talking about. So what we have done as a strategy in terms of HNIs, because HNI fundraising is purely built on trust and networks. So what we have done is we have gotten certain key HNIs with us who are not just committing funds to us, but are also connecting us with their networks that are there and helping us raise funds. Because if we go directly to their network, chances are very less that we will be able to raise funds from them. But if they recommend somebody to us, it will be much better for us to raise funds from them, right? So that is something that we heavily focused on during COVID, and we actually reaped the benefits a lot, because the good thing was that, one, there was no detailed proposal and writing that we had to do. It was mostly conversations that we had to engage in, share details about the organization. And since one HNI was already on board with us, we were able to grow that further to other individuals as well. So these are some of the things that we did here. Sorry. Just a minute. Yeah. So this was about the fundraising journey that we have had over the years. Going forward, if I'm able to share some learnings with you over the last 5 years of me raising funds, there are 3 buckets in which I have distributed my learnings. One is in terms of building partnerships, in terms of thinking about the timing of funds, and third is building trust. So in terms of partnerships, the first thing that for all of us it is important to understand is the importance of networks. Like this, the whole in general, like sort of networking is very key, because you don't really know where the corrections can come from and who can recommend you to whom. But specifically in terms of non-profit fundraising, because it works on the principle of trust, if one person has invested or supported you, the chances of people who know that person coming on board is very high. So in terms of that, the conversion ratio really becomes 3 to 4 times higher than what it could be if you had directly reached out to that person. Or to that extent, we have actually stopped doing cold calling anymore in terms of corporates. And what we're thinking is that we will go ahead with a set of mentors that we have. So we have a like sort of set of mentors who have supported and who believe in our program that we engage in very frequently. And what we are saying to them, because these are like at senior positions of various corporates, we are trying to tell them that, can you connect us with this person? Can you connect us with this person? So we have done the landscaping of various specific POCs of various corporates who are there, who handle the fundraising of that corporate or foundation. And we are asking them to make one-on-one connect rather than us engaging in a cold conversation there. That is one. Two, which I call a Mayday fund, but this is essentially an emergency fund that is there, which is extremely critical for non-profits to have in order to survive and see the next day, right? Because what happens is, I've seen a lot of organizations, especially during COVID, when they had not built their emergency funds and they had to take some drastic measures in terms of either downsizing their teams or deducting their salaries and so on. We fortunately did not have to take any of these extreme measures, primarily because, one, we had a set of funding that we had kept with us, and that funding can be your 2 month fund, 3 month funds, or so on. That is really dependent on what is your per month burn rate. But that is extremely critical for you to have in emergency fund somewhere stocked that you do not have to touch. And the best way to create that emergency fund is either, one, you have a set of HNIs who are willing to give you a cash credit in the time of need, or you have some of the unrestricted funds that you have saved over the period of running 2-3 years of organization that you can leverage later. So that is there. And third, if you are anywhere from like 0 to 3 or 5 years of your organization journey, please apply for incubators, because incubators, if apart from the immediate fund or the grant support that they provide, they also provide you with a bunch of networks that are very useful further. So for example, all the incubators were involved was a part of, at the end of their accelerator or incubator program, we had something called as a demo day or a soiree, where we pitched in front of 50 or 60s of HNIs or corporates and shared about our work. The thing to understand is that it might not convert immediately, but the important thing to understand is that your name gets noticed in all the people that are there. So probably after 2 years or 1 year, when you go to them for funds, you will not be a stranger to them and they would have already known you. The key to understand is just knowing itself builds that trust. So if you're going to somebody where they already know you or heard about you from somewhere else, they've already you have already crossed that 50% trust barrier that was there, compared to somebody who would have gone there for the first time and the name would have never been heard, right? This is from where I come to the second part, which is around timing. The first thing to understand in general sort of non-profit fundraising is that you have to be patient. Things do not convert immediately. There would be sort of like organizations who would not respond immediately. You'll have to follow up 3 times, 4 times, 5 times to do that. But that's absolutely okay, because that's the way that you will be raising funds. The second thing that has helped us a lot is what I call 24-hour readiness on proposals. So what it means is that you have a set of standard questions available with you that you know is going to be asked in all the general proposals that are there, and be ready to submit any kind of a proposal within a span of 24 hours. Because there have been so many opportunities that have come to us where people have just called us and asked, can you submit a presentation by tomorrow night, right? And if you have that set of questions ready, it becomes so much easier to submit sort of proposals or a deck like that, and then get that funding, right? There was this one fund that we had applied to, which had a funding amount of 5 lakhs, not very high, but the fact that we were able to just submit a proposal in like 4 hours and get that funding convert after 1 week gave us a huge return on investment. So that's why preparedness on certain questions and readiness with certain proposals really helps. So you can essentially, what you can do is have a set of 12-15 questions that are generally asked in terms of what is the problem that you're solving, what is your approach toward the solution, the theory of change, impact, team, and so on. Have 100 to 200 word answers on that you can submit easily whenever the new proposal comes on board, right? And the third thing that is to understand is that fundraising is really a marathon and not a 100-meter race. What I mean when I say this is that, let's say you approach a corporate, and even after following up for a couple of months, they decide not to go ahead with you for that financial year. That doesn't mean that they will never fund you. Sometimes it takes time to build that trust with larger organizations, and they might you might be in their books for like 2 years, 3 years, and then they may decide to fund you as such. And this happened with us as well. Like there was this corporate that I was chasing for since the very beginning that I had started the organization, because we knew them, and they kept on saying that, yeah, we like the work, but you're not yet big enough for us. You're not doing the relevant work for us, and so on. And then in the 4th year, essentially, they gave us the first set of funding to go ahead, right? So that's something that I would suggest, that even though you have reached out to certain corporates and at that point of time they have said no, keep the communication on, keep that engagement. You don't have to spend a lot of time on this. Just a quarterly email about your organization and the work that you're doing would be more than sufficient to engage them further, right? Because in that way, they keep on knowing what you're doing. And at any point in time, if they feel that they would like to support you now, they can reach out to you. So that's something that really helps. And the third thing, which is the core of all of this, is the trust that you create. And ways of creating trust that I have seen sort of ways is one, over communication. So the learning that I've had in this sector is the deficit of trust gets created if there is a lack of communication between two parties, right? So if you proactively communicate about your progress, about your challenges, about your successes to the stakeholders who are going to fund you, or the mentors that are there, it is very, very important. That will be very, very critical for them to essentially trust you and know that, okay, you're doing good work. And even though things don't go as per planned, you are not going to hide things from them, but rather take their help in making things better. So that really helps a lot. The other thing that I've seen a lot of organizations not do is be very proactive on compliance. This has been my learning, and through a sort of a difficult route that I would say that we should never compromise on compliance. Keep your sort of compliance documents to the updated to the top. If you need to invest more money in having a good chartered accountant, do that. Have good auditors who can really audit your reports and so on, but do not compromise on compliance. We lose, sort of, even if everything is good, the corporate or the foundation really loves your work, they like the team, but if their sort of due diligence team finds some error on your reports or on compliance, they will not go ahead with your funding. And that's why it is very, very critical that we maintain our compliance to the top as much as possible. And the third thing that is very, very critical is solid documentation. Be it your annual impact reports or the quarterly reports of the program that you make, or the quarterly emails that you send as an organization update to all the organizations. It will be very, very critical that the things are documented very well, because you never know when a certain individual will ask you and say, okay, can you send me the report of the last quarter of the work that you have done, right? And in which case, if you do not have that, you will have to spend a lot of time in terms of getting data and ask the team to do these things, and they may not even have the data for that, right? So it's a good practice that you can build in the organization to have at least quarterly reports of all the programs that you do, so that it can be made available to any individual who is there. Some general notes on what has helped me raise funds and make my life peaceful. One, storytelling is the key and probably the most important aspect of fundraising. The extent to which you are able to make that person visualize about the challenges of the stakeholders that you work with, or the possibilities and the gains that it can create, your program can create for them, is going to be the key deciding factor on whether somebody chooses to fund you or not. Apart from the specific basic checks, right, like demography, theme, and so on. So within a specific sector, why would anybody fund you is by and large dependent on the stories that you're able to tell them and the connect that they're able to make with the cause that you're working on. And I've sort of seen a lot of founders say that, oh, the funder that I go to should have knowledge about the work that we're sort of the sector that we're doing and the problems that are there. And the reality is, no, majority of them will not have any understanding. Even some of the sort of executives, corporate CSR executives who will be there may not have significant understanding about the on-ground realities and so on. So you being able to describe that and talk about that is going to be the one of the key points in raising funds. The second thing is about having thick skin. Like I was saying, we have to be patient. We have to really sell about our work any place that we see and at any point in time. Do not get bogged down by rejections. Like there are thousands and tens of thousands of individuals or corporates who are there to sort of fund. So even if 5 of them, 10 of them do not really like your work or don't fund it, that doesn't mean that the others will not. So essentially keep on selling, keep on pushing your idea and cause. And even though there are people who give sort of certain very strong critical feedback about your work, do not get disheartened by that and continue going forward. The third thing, and which may be a bit of a controversial point, but that's something that I have sort of accepted for now, is that there is a power dynamics in this ecosystem with respect to the people who fund and with respect to the people who receive funds, right? So it really depends on you, on which battle you want to fight and to what extent you want to sort of just keep on, ranting about that, and or rather you choose to move forward and realize who are the sort of funders that I can work with. That really helps me sleep peacefully, because there are a lot of funders that I go to where I would have to push a lot in terms of driving my point, or we would have to make certain compromises on the way that we do things. What I have decided for myself is to see what are my non-negotiables that I will not compromise on. And beyond that, I'm okay to sort of make changes as if my team is okay with that. And also what I've seen is that as long as it helps me raise funds for the organization, I do not mind following up 10 times or 20 times with a funder who is there. So keeping that ego or the pride aside for a time being, and ensuring that your job as a founder or CEO is to raise funds for the organization, and that's why you are here, would really help us raise funds and sort of be peaceful about the whole thing as well. Because it's not something that you would be just doing for a month or two, sort of year. You have to continue to do the same thing for year and year onward. That sort of really helps. The fourth point that I've realized over the period of like sort of 4 years is crowdfunding, retail fundraising is a heavy engagement game, because the ticket sizes coming from each individuals are very small. There are volumes of people who essentially support the organization. So as you grow, you may not have enough sort of bandwidth to be able to engage with these retail funders, unless the work that you do is very, very tangible and that every individual person is able to realize how they're contributing, right? Unless you're able to do that, going forward, retail fundraising doesn't, at least for us, has not given a lot of returns. For example, for me, it gets capped at about 10 to 15 lakhs, or even to that extent 20 lakhs. So if my organization budget is going to be about 1.5 crores, I would not want to invest a significant chunk of my time doing crowdfunding. I may still do it with respect to the specific set of like sort of key supporters that I have built in over the past 3-4 years, who would help me raise sort of 8 to 10 lakhs. But beyond that, the 10 to 15 lakhs that still remains, I may not choose to invest a lot of my time and effort in doing that. That's something that you can also keep in mind. And overall, with respect to it really depends on what stage of the organization that you are in. And based on that, you would decide the efforts versus returns that are there, right? So for example, retaining an existing funder is always a less effort, high returns game than onboarding a new funder. So that is one basic thing that we can sort of always understand. The second thing would be that, like I was saying, in terms of, I'll talk about our sort of clear plan. So in terms of the thing that we have thought going forward is one, the CSR funding for us is the most scalable funds that are available to us, because we know that there is a specific set of funding that corporates have to spend in the financial year. And if you're able to tap into specific corporates who are there, it will be much easier for us to retain that amount of funds. The other thing that I've realized is HNIs or high net worth individuals are the best people for us to raise that unrestricted funding or that emergency capital that I was talking about. Because as an early stage organization, your so-called administrative cost will definitely not be less than 10%. It may even go up to 25% for that matter. And in this case, the HNI funds that you have will be much useful. The other thing that you can do, which is something that like sort of I recommend doing as well, is where you can have some of the indirect cost put in your budget as a direct program cost, where you can have certain individuals going on the ground and spend at least some amount of the time doing that, so that you can budget that sort of part of the fund into a direct programmatic fund as well. And so your overheads in that way will reduce a lot, right? So that is something that you can also do in a way to raise part of the money from corporate or a foundation where they have a specific limit on the administrative cost. But apart from that, really, I would suggest that build a strong HNI network or a set of mentors who are able to bring funds for the organization that is not very restrictive to the project that you're working in. So what we essentially say is that this is an organization fund where they are putting money for the organization and not for the specific project that you are running, right? And the third thing that I really recommend in terms of raising funds strongly is having a strong board and making that expectation very clear from certain board members who are actually capable of doing this, that in this year you are looking at raising X much amount of fund, and why of that is something that you have figured out, but the rest of it is something where you will need help from, so that they can plan their time over the course of 1 year in terms of helping you raise that fund. That is very important, because the people who you choose to get on board, on your board, may not directly fund you. That is something that you can take a call on whether you want them to influence your PF sort of organization strategy or not. But the networks that they will bring in and the kind of HNI that they would be connected with would be very helpful for you in raising more funds, because just the one push from their side can help you get significant chunk of their funding. So that is primarily what we have done that has helped us a lot. What we've also realized in terms of our strategy for raising funds going forward is that it may not be possible for the head of the organization or the CEO to continue to raise funds beyond that 1.52 crore bracket, primarily because the number of stakeholders that you're engaging with becomes a lot. So one individual is not enough to engage with all the stakeholders, provide them reports and engage them. So recommend getting, that's something that we will be doing from this year onward, getting a fundraising lead on board who can help the CEO with in terms of writing proposals, in terms of doing the initial landscaping, in terms of engaging with the funders who are already converted and so on. So that's something that I would highly recommend in terms of helping raise funds as well. I would stop here. I hope that I've not taken a lot of, I've taken a lot of time. So we can go ahead with the questions.
Thank you so much. No, you've not taken a lot of time. Devanshu, I do have a couple of questions before we move to the audience's questions, and we are getting them in the chat box. And I'll just share, I have 3 or 4, but I'll just share a couple of those. One is that you touched upon incubators, right? I know you've been a part of incubators in India and abroad. You're now becoming part of an accelerator as well. So if you could just very quickly share your thoughts on the importance of becoming a part of either an incubator or an accelerator, and what is the value they bring. I think that's one. Second, specifically about the CSR piece, you mentioned an engagement program. So if you could just talk a little bit about what did you mean when you said engagement program? And sorry, a third one, and then we'll go to the questions from the audiences because there are quite a few, is we saw the poll, right? And we're working with the assumption that most of the people who are here from the capacity of doing fundraising for their organizations. The amount of time that they spend is usually 0 to 25%, like a large chunk, right? So do you want to shed a little light on that, especially if assuming that most of the audiences are leaders and founders of the organization? What's a healthy mix? Or you mentioned you did talk about getting a fundraising leader, but what's the kind of role that even a team can play in supporting the founder or the leader? And I'll keep quiet and we'll move.
Yeah, I'll start with the first one. So in the early stage, I think especially if you have not been in the nonprofit space, incubators help you get the context and get the initial set of network that you will very surely need, because nonprofit fundraising works on a very key currency of trust, like I was saying. So how do people get to know you? Having an incubator on board essentially helps you with that, where they will connect with them. And because getting into an incubator is generally a competitive process where you would have written proposals and put down some applications, done some interviews. So other funders who are there believe that if you've gotten into a prestigious incubation program, you would have certain substance in that. And even if you have not very strongly shown the impact of your program because you are in very early years, you have potential to do that. So that's how you get differentiated. So that is one place where I think incubators play a very good role. The second place where incubators play a very good role is in terms of your capacity building. My presentation before the nudge incubation and after that was significantly different. So they help you refine that presentation. What are the key things that you should look out for? What are the key things that funder look for? What is the call to action that you can have? What are the key documents that you can create? So if I can answer this right now, I would recommend having three set of documents like always ready with you. One is a one-pager in a single page summarizing your program in detail and the call to action for a funder. The second is a presentation deck, which has details about all the programs and what you expect to get support from the funder and the team. And the third is a Word document, a concept note about your organization in like 4 to 5 page, future plans, and so on, a detailed work like in terms of a document. What it helps is essentially there are different type of people who will be there, and irrespective of what the requirement is, they will either ask one of these three things. One pager is generally an expression of interest. They would just want to know whether this thing is there, or you guys are relevant for them or not. And then otherwise, if they want to move forward, they'll ask for a deck or a proposal. So in that way, these three set of documents really become helpful. And that's the way I think that incubators help you in that capacity building, helping you understand the context of the sector, provide you with that network, and especially the peer group, right? You learn a lot from the peer groups who are there in the segment. So I still have strong connect with all the organizations who were my cohort in various incubators who were there. So that really helps as well. The second question was around engagement of corporates, right? Corporate engagement is very important because, and we can look at engagement from two senses. One is the employee engagement that is fairly common. Generally, employee engagements that are expected can be around an hour a month. You do not have to do a lot. You don't have to do very less. So 1 hour a month or even once in a quarter is a good way of engaging the employees of any corporate. Because look, from a corporate point of view, as much as it is about giving the funds that they have as a part of the budget, it is really important to also engage the team members and the employees that they have. So anything that you can do on that front would be important. It may not directly connect with your program, because a lot of times in our case, it did not connect with our program. But we still did certain engagement in terms of having a skilling session for our team members or for the students who were there. And that kept the engagement fairly cool for the corporate that we are working with. So in that sense, I think that is one way of engagement that you should do. The second set of engagement is depending on, again, the effort that you can put in and the quantum of funding that the corporate is giving. You should have monthly or quarterly meetings with the corporate to share about your work. In the early stages, you may not see a lot of questions coming in and engagement coming in, but over a period of time, this really helps, because when you are trying to proactively communicate your progress from your side, they know that this is a good organization who is trying to do good work. So in that way, the trust gets created very well. Right? Coming to the third question, which is about having a healthy mix of various channels of funds that are there. That was the question, right?
I was asking about if the founder is, how much time should the founder be spending?
Time. Okay, yeah. So what I've looked at is in the sort of advanced stages, the founder has to spend a lot of time also on building the advocacy and the brand of their organization. So doing the hardcore fundraising work may not be possible completely, and because also the sort of the work increases a lot. So what I would suggest doing is things that are repeatable and things that can be learned where it doesn't require like compulsory for the founder to be in, that can be delegated to a fundraising lead. So things like writing proposals, engaging with early set of CSR executives, or doing that engagement, doing the landscaping for whom to reach out to. All of these things are something that the fundraising lead can take care of, while the founder can specifically engage with one, interacting with the HNIs who are there, because HNIs generally, since they're investing in the organization and not in some specific project, they want to know what is the strategy for the organization, what are the founders thinking, and so on. So in that way, that is the place where they should invest time. The other place where they should invest time in talking to the corporate leaders who are there once in a quarter, because then they will be able to get a sense of what is the strategy of that corporate in going forward. That is a lens that only you will be able to understand and may not be able to understand by the people who have come in immediately. So yeah, this would be primarily. So I would suggest that about 20 to 30% of the time should still go into raising funds. If you can do more, that is great. But anything beyond that, I think becomes much difficult for founders to give in.
Thank you. Shweta, you've raised your hand. Would you want to unmute yourself and ask a question before we move to the ones in the chat box?
Yeah, hi.
Yes.
So it is, I have already put in chat box also. So it is regarding CSR funding. What will be our first step? Because when we try, like, when we call in corporate, they are like, what is this? We don't understand this. So whom should we connect with? Whom should we, like, when I'm calling somebody in a company, what will be the first step?
Great. There are multiple ways to do this depending on the kind of corporate that you're targeting, right? A best way to reach is to reach out to if there is a mid-sized corporate, reach out to the HR head of that corporate on LinkedIn and share about your work. Or find a sort of the relevant POC on various websites like CSR Box, NGO Box, and so on, and reach out to them on LinkedIn and share about your concern. That's the way to do it. If the corporates are smaller, then you should directly sort of reach out to their executives, CXOs, and see if you can engage them in a conversation. But having said all of that, I still think that the best way in which you can convert CSR funding is, one, look at, if you have landscaped the set of corporate that you want to get on board, look at who all are very active on LinkedIn or other social media, because the ones who are very proactive are the ones who know exactly what is happening in the sector and what is sort of the cause that they can support. And two, get the networks that you have, be it your mentors or supporters, to connect with you with specific leaders of various organizations. These are two better ways of converting a corporate.
Thank you. It answers my question. Thank you so much.
Paresh, do you want to go ahead? And then we can
Yeah,
to the
hi, so just wanted to ask you. So I saw you mention Capgemini and Wells Fargo in one of your fundraisers, but you have also mentioned that you don't receive, you have not received any foreign funding. So how did that transaction happen when Gemini, where I believe that Capgemini and funds from Wells Fargo would come under foreign source?
No. So they have specific Indian entities set up who provide certain funds. So we do not need to have FCRA to receive funds from these corporates.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So look for, even if the companies are foreign entities, look at if they have entities in India set up. Because if they have Indian entities set up, then they are very much in the sort of compliance to give you funds. However, there was this sort of, to give an example, another example, if that answers the question, like we had one company who were interested in giving funds to us, but they did not have any Indian entity on board. So what they did was they actually went through one of the consultants that they were working with and sort of transferred money from there as well. So there are ways that you can figure out if the company is very much aligned that they want to give funds to you.
Dildar, you want to ask your question? And then Mohit, can I request you as well? I know you were the first one to have actually put in a question. So.
Sure. Can I go?
Yes, please. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am Dildar from Kashmir.
I will that, yeah.
Yeah, I am on wheelchair for 24 years. And now we are working for an organization which will take care of the persons on wheelchair. But the problem is when anybody sees a person on wheelchair, he understands that yes, he cannot walk. This is the only thing people know. But it is not that. It is much beyond that. Second care, loose motions, no control on urination. So when it comes to the solution, it is not possible to make the world accessible. So we are thinking of a rehab home. Rehab, it is a mixed term, rehabilitation center and home. We have mixed it rehab home, where we can get both. Because most of us are unmarried. This accident happens in 20s, like me. My mom has died, I am alone in this world. Where shall I go? What about the last moments of my life? Who will care me? Who will give me money? You need somebody at your last breath. No one dies while walking. Everyone dies on bed. So there should be someone around him.
Sorry, what is the question?
Question is, what should we do first when we get the registration certificate? What should we do first to build a rehab home? Because it's a big project.
I think regarding registration, you should be able to, even if there are two people who are willing to register an organization, you can choose to register your organization as a trust or a society. And then there is a fairly simple process. I would suggest you to get in touch with a chartered accountant, and they will definitely help you with that.
No, it is under process. It is in last stages.
Okay.
Because Kashmir was changed from state to UT, that is why it got delayed. Otherwise, it is in last stage of registration. It is known as Csr, C-A-R-E, where every word has a meaning. Csr means C-A-R-E. C means concern, A means about, R means rehabilitation, E means empowerment.
Got it.
Whole name is Csr. The meaning is concerned about rehabilitation and empowerment. What should we do for the big?
You can definitely look at crowdfunding as an option. I think that would be the best way to raise funds in the early stage. You can explore sites like Milap, Keto, and Give India.
And please share your number with me.
Sure.
Okay,
For
thank you.
Dildar, we'll share Devanshu's email ID with everybody. Quickly, I know we're a little over time, but can I request Mohit,
Sure.
would you want to, yes,
Yes,
please go ahead.
yeah, very quickly. Thank you so much, Divyanshu. I think the whole presentation was extremely useful for several reasons. My question is a very quick one here. I'm trying to understand, we are trying to provide services to NGOs as well as sometimes could be for-profit organizations or CSRs as well. So we may not be qualified to be registered as an NGO, as a trust or a society or a Section 8 company. So just wanted to understand a bit about what are the possible early stage management consultancies or likewise organizations that in your experience you have come across, and are they registered as partnership firms, as proprietorships, as private limited? What are the compliance issues around that?
So I think it really depends on how you want to register them, because I've seen both non-profit as well as for-profit organizations who provide these services. Though in a very, the operations model could be a bit different, but otherwise both these sort of legal entities exist. So for example, the incubators and the accelerator program that we generally see, they're all registered as non-profits, right? While I also have, I'm forgetting the name, that's like my alumni, college alumni herself has started an organization where they provide fundraising consultancies to various organizations and also some other support like M&E communications and so on. And that is registered as a for-profit, right? The operational model will change here because as a for-profit, you will need some money to sort of survive for your company itself. So what we'll do is essentially we'll become a vendor for various corporates who will then give the money either to you or directly to the non-profits, and you will take certain consultancy fee there. While if you're registered as a incubator or specifically as a non-profit, then the money that you get from a corporate, you can get the money in which your administrative cost will be factored in, and the rest of the money will then be distributed to the organizations that get supported. So the operation model will be different, but you can actually register it as both depending on what you essentially want to do.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much.
Great. I'm afraid this is all the time we have for now. I know there are a lot of questions. It's a topic that always just ensures there's a really good mix of conversation, questions, just building a better understanding. But thank you so much.
Question I have. Quickly,
okay.
As a new CSR 2 guidelines, the unspent money, we have to return it back to the corporate, or we have to carry forward for the next year?
I'm not specifically sure about that because I think there are two scenarios that you can do. One is if you can have a specific commitment written where you will be spending the money immediately in the coming financial year, then I think you can keep the money, but otherwise I think you may have to return it. I'm not completely sure about it. I would actually suggest you to check. This is a good question for me. I should note it down for myself.
Kindly revert on this because we are very much this thing. Being a big organization, Augusta International Foundation is a big organization. More few corporate people, they're asking the return the money, and few of them they're asking us to carry forward. So we are also in dilemma whether to send it the few corporates or not. So kindly help us.
Sure, I will check that.
Devanshu, I think Azhar has a question. So if you do have a couple of minutes, so please.
Thank you.
10 and then we'll close.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Atma, Divyani, for just giving me an opportunity. I'm audible to you, Devanshu?
Yes, please go ahead.
Devanshu, my name is Azhar Sheikh, and I'm just behalf of Next Million Foundation from Aurangabad, Maharashtra. Yeah. So my question is that you have been said that if you want to raise the funding, like if you are not be like if you are in a new organization in between of 1 to 3 years, you can just reach to the incubators. So my question is that like the incubators has been designed as for the startups, like for the profitable organization, like incubators who can incubate for that, or they are really incubate into NGOs, non-profit organization, they will really fund for that.
Yeah, like there are like lots of non-profit incubators that have come up over the years.
Okay.
And they provide, like I said, like because we are a non-profit, all the incubators that we have been a part of are
Okay.
incubators who are focused on non-profits.
Okay. So can I get the name of someone's? Should
Yeah, so I can share it right away. One is Nudge Incubation Program.
Just wait, I will note down. Yeah, first one.
Yeah, this is sector agnostic. Then there is
Okay.
Edumentum.
Okay.
For education organizations, there is Wipro.
Okay.
There is Unlimited India.
Unlimited India. Okay.
Ashoka is for senior organizations. But again, like sort of Atma can definitely sort of help you with that, and we can share a list of incubators who are available.
Okay, and only one last question, only just taking for 30 seconds. So the thing is that means like what will be the best way? Can we approach directly to the corporates for the fundraising, or we can just have an consultancy like some of who is a CSR consultant who can be able to just raise the fund on behalf of to the corporates? Means like directly we are not approaching to the corporate, they will just raise the fund on behalf of non-profit organization.
I would suggest in the early stages you should do it on your own.
Okay.
Because the whole experience of raising funds is very, very critical for a founder.
Okay.
You will be able to understand the corporate thought process, the ways of engagement, and so on.
Okay. So
you can definitely rely on consultants as well, but I would strongly suggest that you also do it on your own.
So any something like a guidance or something like how to approach the corporates and all that in a very specific
that will go into
that's how you have been taken the
we can
session
take it later.
Okay, chalo. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Like I said, we will share the recording with everybody. We will share Devanshu's email ID as well. So should you want to connect with him a little later, please do so. A lot of the questions that were asked today, we've had multiple rounds of webinar conversations on fundraising through Atma with different speakers. I'll request you all to take a look at all of these and see if they've been able to answer most of the questions that you have on fundraising. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining today and being so engaging. Good luck. Thank you. Thank you so much, Devanshu.
Devina, can you share his email ID, please? I joined a little late.
No problem. I'll share it. I will send out an email with all the details.
No,
I'll share it with you.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, I will share the recording as well with you.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.